Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. This starts a pretty regular 1 hour hit on Sundays between John Middlekauff, a former NFL scout with Philadelphia, who has been obviously a regular on this podcast network since I think pretty much day one. Go Lowe's, his golf podcast as well. So, I was thinking about this, that when I built the volume, one of the things I think about all the time is I think of it a little bit like a swimming area, stay in your lane. Like there are things I know and things I don't. And we have a series of people. You're a football guy and a golf guy. Like everybody has sort of a lane. And it's worked that way. And I've seen that most of my life in corporate America. And in corporate America, when you have problems is when people think, a sales guy suddenly comes up and wants to talk to me about content. ESPN was famous for that. Here, I've got a segment I think could work well for a car dealership. And I'm like, I'll create segments. If you can sell them, you sell them. But Fox has never asked me to do a segment because they found a sponsor. Like that's not the way it works. It shouldn't work that way. So Belichick, prime example, got into trouble. He took over personnel. Pete Carroll in Seattle got into trouble. He and John Snyder. Once John Snyder, the last couple of years, took over personnel, Seahawks had back-to-back great drafts. They had several where Pete had influence, where they just kept missing on first-round picks. Rashad Penny, the running back, is a great example where everything was a reach. So when the players vote on the NFL Top 100, it's illuminating. It lets you look into what matters to players. They love athleticism. Lamar Jackson is voted the number one quarterback over Patrick Mahomes because he's viewed as hyper athletic. This is the NBA players, a majority thinking Westbrook's better than Steph Curry, despite the fact they're both guards. One can't shoot and has bad hands. Like the two most important things for a guard. Can you?
Well, look who likes him now. Jokic wants Russell Westbrook on his teams. Like, what are we doing?
So, it's interesting. I don't have a problem. I love Lamar. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but it's interesting. They have Dak Prescott ahead of Matt Stafford and Joe Burrow. Nobody thinks that. Like in the league, when you talk to personnel people, I mean, Dak struggles with the best offensive line for years in football to win a single playoff game. Burrow got to the Super Bowl with an egregiously bad offensive line. So in the days that you were working for the Eagles, I look at the top 100. I'm not offended by it, but it illuminates how players view the world. Hyper athleticism is viewed on a grand scale for players.
I just think the way personnel departments and coaches work in the NBA, if the Warriors are going to do something big, they talk with Steph Curry. Obviously, LeBron James has a huge hand in personnel, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you got to keep him happy. The most famous dynasty of my life, the Patriots, never asked Tom Brady's opinion one time. Now, it doesn't mean they shouldn't have it, but it never even crossed Bill's mind. Andy is not asking Patrick Mahomes, for his draft board, right? Or in free agency. Now, when a player plays somebody, if you play Lamar Jackson and he kicks your ass and you go, that was really good. Like that, there's something to be said. But in the NFL, you don't play every team. So in the NFC, only 4 teams in the NFC played the Ravens last year, right? It rotates every 4 years. So half the league is not even playing this player. And then there are teams in the AFC that aren't playing him either. Colin, this ranking, which I honestly have to fake even caring about, I do not care about this. And the Madden rankings, which had Lamar and Patrick Mahomes right here. Josh Allen is a better player than Lamar Jackson. Yeah. He's a better player. The Chiefs feared Josh Allen. They just played them both back-to-back playoffs on the road. They feared Josh Allen. They were excited to play Lamar. Again, that's not saying that Lamar's not good. They knew they could handle Lamar. Josh Allen has kind of owned them. This is in the playoffs. The reason the Bills haven't won was Sean McDermott, the defense, not Josh. To me, there is a gap. Again, Lamar's regular season in the playoffs, he hasn't been remotely the same.
No.
And that's a big problem for a team that at this point in time, like, we're not judging the Ravens on 12 wins, 13 wins. Like, who cares? Like, yeah, I expect the Ravens to be in the playoffs. He's getting judged on those couple games, just like Mahomes. And that's the thing with Josh. He hasn't won, but I think we all go, not totally his fault, right? They were Peyton Manning games early when I remember being in like early in college and high school, and I loved Peyton. I was like, this doesn't look like the same guy I've just watched for 16 weeks. And that's how Lamar felt in the big games. Where Mahomes, he's like a chameleon. He's morphed. He was like one point in time, he was throwing like Dan Marino. Now he's like became a game manager this year because of his team. It's like he can do it all.
Do you know the one position that they have asked Mahomes' opinion in the draft? It's the one position Kansas City drafts poorly, wide receiver. So they have asked Mahomes from time to time for an opinion on college receivers. And I imagine they listen to him if they ask. Brett Veach drafts everything great except wide receiver. And my take is he has an influence. If you ask, because I heard they have asked Mahomes' opinion on wide receivers. Well, if you ask his opinion and he says, I like this guy, you're not going to avoid that guy if he's available. You're probably going to, and it's the one position where they've been really immature. Tony, immature. Rashee Rice, immature. Yeah. Xavier Worthy, I think that's his name, out of Texas. I mean, he's 160 pounds. I mean, you can jam him up on the line. He'll make spectacular plays, but he's pretty talented.
No,
he is. I'm not disputing that. But there's also video all over practice of him getting tossed around like a crouton in a salad bowl, just getting thrown all over the field.
Deshaun weighed 100. Now, Deshaun was more talented, I think, than this player. He went in the second round because there were a ton of question marks. When you have the elite speed, now Deshaun was a great route runner. I think a lot of people view Xavier Worthy as more than just a go route guy. If he can do everything else, Andy has a soft spot for guys with a little trouble. Like Andy's not afraid of those. Bill just wants to avoid that at all costs for the most part. Andy kind of embraces it. And I'm not saying and that's the Tonys, even Tyreek early on. Kelsey was a character guy coming out of high school. So I think Andy feels pretty comfortable that he can mold that. But overall, the quarterback ranking, you could not have an NFL quarterback ranking and not have Josh Allen second. And I take you seriously. Yeah. You can't do it. I think he's the second best quarterback. And honestly, I have more faith in him winning. It's on the organization, but because I've seen him be awesome in the playoffs. I mean, say what you want about, the Bengals, who the owners, Ben Sheep, they have proven over the last 20 years, they've had moments with Marvin Lewis and Carson Palmer, some really good teams, with Marvin Lewis and the Andy Dalton teams. Like they can build a team. Joe Burrow benefited 2 years ago. Their team was talented.
I mean, Cincinnati is like the Chargers. They've gotten quarterback right a lot. I mean, the Chargers have gone Fouts, Breeze, Rivers, Herbert. I mean, go back to Kenny Anderson. Yeah, he was Cincinnati. Kenny Anderson, Boomer Esiason.
He played Joe Montana in the playoffs.
Kenny Anderson, Boomer Esiason, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, Joe Burrow. And those two franchises will drive you nuts, but they've gotten quarterback right more than they've missed.
How about even last year when Burrow goes down?
Jake Browning.
What's the quarterback? All of a sudden, Jake Browning, who I watched in college, I said, this guy couldn't play. And you're watching him last year, like, God, this guy's not bad. Yeah. So they developed.
Yeah.
Hey, football fans, if you're looking to dominate your fantasy league next year, then we've got the channel for you. From the NFL draft through training camp and week 1 to Super Bowl Sunday, Fantasy Pros is the home of football content you cannot afford to miss. Subscribe today, and your team will be in championship form in no time.
And I've argued this. Tyreek Hill just got a new 3-year deal. No New Year's added, just a pay raise. And I've argued this, and this is like matter of fact. Take your feelings out of it. The Chiefs have won back-to-back Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill. Fact. And I've said this about Tyreek Hill. I'm not a believer at all in dominant number 1 receivers, especially with a Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy is not getting paid. If you have a star receiver getting paid a lot, there's sort of a psychology like, I got to feed this guy. This guy's got to eat. I remember Dak broke into the league with Dez Bryant. Dez left, and you lose that 9 touchdowns a year, but Dak to grow had to spread the ball around and see the entire field. And I do think with Mahomes and Tyreek, it became sort of he's always open. And it's forced over the last 2 years.
He was a lot.
But it has forced Mahomes to throw underneath, to take what the defense gives you. I think Mahomes has actually, I'll argue, has grown as a quarterback
100%
without Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill made his job much easier, and he's obviously naturally gifted. So if you want a young quarterback to grow, everybody's fearful of Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. He's still a little bit in the growing curve where he's got to take more of what the defense gives him. So that's my knock on Tyreek Hill. Yes, he's fast, but he's a deep threat with a quarterback without a big deep threat arm. So he's flashy, he's exciting. I could think of 10 quarterbacks in the league where Tyreek Hill would be a better fit than Tua. And I think he's a terrific player. I don't think he's the best player, number one, like the players do in the league, but I think he's very, very valuable. But I am not a believer in this. If you're asking me, the Niners, I think their DNA is Shanahan, Trent Williams, Debo, and McCaffrey, and Kittle somewhat physically. I think Ayuk's just really talented. I think there's this bubble now with wide receivers where show me all the playoff wins for Tyreek and Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams. Where are they?
Well, with Tyreek, I do think the Dolphins, he kind of had him by the balls because, like you said, he would be better off with a bigger arm quarterback.
Yes,
We've
no question.
Before, but they can't even dream of functioning without him and Waddle. I mean, when those guys go down, they look differently. And the whole, once you double down on Tua, you can't get rid of him or it would look really bad. You want to make it look good. I do think the 49ers already kind of showed their hands. It was like, they got some needs. You know, Trent Williams getting older. You know, you can always go defense. And they took a wide receiver at the end of the first round. And now, big picture, maybe they already thought, hey, we get Ayuk. That's Debo. Because he's more of an over-the-middle. He can break tackles. He's what Kyle likes. And ultimately, you can't have, this is not sustainable for the 49ers. Now, part of it is that guys are older too. But in the next 2 years, all these guys are not going to be on the team. And this is what the Chiefs did. Listen, Veach, it's an all-time move. Trading him. What were the Chiefs last year? A defensive team. How were they a defensive team? Well, Trent McDuffie became a superstar. Yeah. Karlaftis, they were able to invest in Chris Jones. Now, they had less on offense, but their quarterback had become like Tom Brady in terms of game management, and their defense was so great, they felt comfortable winning 20-17 or 17-13. And the 49ers are going to have to pivot off Kittle, Debo. One of these guys is not going to be there. And Trent's 35, 36 years old.
I said this before. I have the Rams winning the division. I thought they peaked last year. I think they're going through, I think it's noisy.
But those guys are still on the team, though. That's what I would say. So those guys are still, now the Rams are still dependent on young players. Kyle's dominated him. To me, there's questions. I know Purdy got hurt in the playoff game, but for the most part, like Stafford's health, given the way he plays, given his fearlessness and his age, I was thinking about this the other day because I want to do something. I haven't quite figured out what to call it, but some ranking of the quarterbacks. And I got to like 5 and 6. And I'm like, I haven't even thought about Stafford, and he's better than everyone I'm about to name. Like his high end
is through the roof,
undeniable. It's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and he played like that down the stretch. It's why he took a team full of kids, with Cooper Kupp being a shell of himself, toe to toe with the Lions, who had the Niners on the ropes. So, yeah, I mean, I think both those teams are locked playoff teams, but the Rams had to pivot, and the Niners are going to have to pivot over the next 18 months with younger players, a lot like the Chiefs did, especially once you pay the quarterback.
Yeah.